Greetings! We are Basic Liches! Big news in the TTRPG community coming from Paizo. Let's get right into it. If you haven't heard, Paizo has announced the Pathfinder 2e Remaster Project. What is the Pathfinder 2e Remaster Project? Is this another edition of Pathfinder? Is this like a 2.5e? Is it something else? We're going to go over all the facts that we know so far right now, so let's dive into it.
So the big news means that the current core rulebook, the Advanced Player's Guide, the Game Master's Guide, and the Bestiaries are going to be revamped, reworked into 4 brand new core rulebooks. And they're going to look more like a Player Core 1, Game Master Core 1, the Monster Core 1, and Player Core 2.
According to Paizo, the reason that these new 4 core rulebooks are going to exist is for new players. It's going to help out with learning the game, and it's going to help out with accessibility. The Player Core 1 and the Game Master's Core rulebook are coming out in November of 2023. The Monster Core is coming out in March 2024, and Player Core 2 is coming out all the way in July of 2024.
For the past few years, Paizo has been making Pathfinder under the open gaming license that Wizards of the Coast has. And in light of recent events this early January this year, they have decided to push this project forward to rebrand Pathfinder as its own entity, especially under a new gaming license, the Open RPG Creative License.
Orc. In order to protect themselves and remove them out of the OGL, we are going to be seeing changes to monsters, spells, alignment is going away, certain classes are going to be changed, the Tiefling is going away. They're going to be making changes throughout those 4 new books that they're putting out there to kind of save themselves in case Wizards of the Coast done lose their mind again.
Just in case.
Paizo is putting 4 years of Pathfinder 2e errata, game balancing tweaks, new spells, new rules. All of this is going in these new 4 core rulebooks. On top of that, they're going to be reworking some of the classes that are in Pathfinder 2e, like the Alchemist, the Witch, and the Champion. They're also reworking the focus point system, making it easier for players to use.
When 2nd edition was first created, they made some very traditional choices that traditional players would not have a problem with when moving into this new system. But I've now realized that they're willing to make terms with some of these changes, one of those being the much anticipated rogues getting martial weapon proficiency. Instead of just using simple weapons. And now wizards are also going to get simple weapon proficiency. In line with keeping themselves protected, they're going to be removing the Tiefling ancestry as well as the Aasimar ancestry. Bye. Peace out. And they're going to be adding the Nephilim ancestry,
which will give you access to both angels and demons. Player Core 1 is only going to have 8 classes when it launches in November. And you're going to find out what they are right on screen now.
Then released in July 2024, the Player Core 2 book is going to have this list of classes.
The alignment system that is near and dear to most D&D and Pathfinder players is kaput. The 3x3 grid, bye-bye. That is gone. It is being replaced with edicts and anathemas. Along with alignments, ability scores are also being nixed in favor of ability modifiers. You will no longer have, presumably, like a 10 in strength or an 18 in strength. You're just going to have a +1 or a +2 or a +3.
Once the Remaster Project is complete and everything is released, Paizo is going to be discontinuing the core rulebook, the Game Master's Guide, the Advanced Player's Handbook, and the Bestiaries. Paizo is also stating that this new Remaster Project is going to be fully compatible.
For all you lovers of the beginner's box product out there, Paizo has said that this is not going to be discontinued. For now, at least. In the future, they may revisit that and they may put out a new entry point to the system. Player Core 1 is receiving the Leshy and Orc as new ancestries that will be available from the get-go. So you can be plant people or orcs. There is a bunch more information about this remaster project out there. We just want to give you what we felt was the most important information right at the front of this video. If you're looking to dive deeper, if you want to get answers from the actual developers, from Paizo's mouth, there are going to be a couple of links in this video down in the nether region below. Feel free to check those out at your leisure. All those facts are out of the way. You're here to listen to a couple of basic liches give you some uninformed opinions. So uninformed opinions, here they come. You have been warned. All right, the biggest question on everybody's mind, Kamo, is this a new edition? What are your thoughts on this remaster project?
I really trust them in saying that this isn't a new edition. And again, they want to protect the edition that they have. They're not really looking to have everyone learn a new system. They just want to build upon the system that they have and make it easier for folks to learn it. Because they want to kind of erase some of that stigma that has grown on them since the past 15 years. The Pathfinder has been a thing. And we can talk about some of the reasons why that stigma is there and shed some light on it.
Paizo has come out and said that this is not like a 0.5 edition upgrade. They call it an errata plus. So if you're looking at this like D&D, I think about that game and how there's rules that are awesome and they're spread amongst like 25 different books.
Yeah.
They're great. There are a lot of awesome rules in D&D 5e. But they've never, and they meaning Wizards, they've never taken the time to condense all of those rules into sort of like a product that's like, hey, this is like a relaunching. This is like everything we've learned. That seems to be what Paizo's doing here. They know that they've got a lot of books out there and they have a lot of variant rules. They have a lot of options. They've cleaned up a lot of stuff throughout the 4 years that Pathfinder 2e's been available. And they want to, especially now that they've got a lot of new players, thanks to the OGL incident, they need books that can help the new Pathfinder player. And like you mentioned, get rid of that stigma that Pathfinder is too crunchy. Because we firmly believe that Pathfinder 2e is just as easy and just as dense as 5e. Don't let people fool you. 5e is not a simple system.
No.
It is about the same complexity as Pathfinder 2e. And the other big sticking point for me is when I think of new edition, there's got to be like monumental changes happening to the core rules. That's not what's happening here. Yes, they are making some pretty big changes in terms of like alignment and ability scores.
It seems like it, right?
Pretty big.
Yeah.
But it's not like we're going to like a D6 dice pool system.
No.
They're not completely starting from the ground up. That's what I kind of think of when you're putting out a brand new edition. And this isn't that.
Or even a 0.5 edition.
Even a 0.5, it leans a little bit closer to that.
It
but
does.
I still, without having seen everything, I'm trusting them at their word that this is not a 0.5 upgrade.
Yeah. I think the remaster is a great idea. I think it's the idea that Wizards of the Coast never had. Like you said, all their rules are all everywhere in so many different places, and it was no different for Pathfinder. Pathfinder had a lot of different new classes. The Advanced Player Guide added so much more to classes and to ancestries and feats, and it just seemed like all over the place. So it was hard to ask your game master, like, what books are we going to be using for this game? Can I dip into this book for this ancestry? Can I dip into this book for this class? And you'd have to ask them all this. Now, it's all going to be consolidated. They're going to be streamlining their product into what they've learned and everything they've created so far.
I'm a little torn on the 4 rule books, breaking it down into what your competitor is essentially doing. But the more I think about it, the more I think it's a smart choice. If you're trying to attract players that are coming from Dungeons and Dragons, they are used to those 3 primary books. Your Monster Manual, your Player's Handbook, and your Dungeon Master's Guide.
They're also getting scared with seeing a large 600-page book.
That's a thick boy.
Wizards of the Coast already knows it. That's why they've divided their products, and it just makes sense that Paizo is kind of following suit with this. So Paizo has claimed that this is going to be 100% compatible with old versions, meaning that everything they release is going to be compatible with other Pathfinder 2e rulebooks from the past. What are your feelings on this?
I'm trusting Paizo, sort of like you are, to do the right thing here and not make a bunch of books completely obsolete. They've done this in the past. They had, like, in Pathfinder First Edition, they had something called, like, Pathfinder Unchained, which wasn't as intense as this because it wasn't like an OGL thing. And right now, they're actually in the process of bringing out Starfinder, the Enhanced Edition, which is, again, they're taking sort of errata and they're tweaking things and making it easier. The primary reason I do trust them, and the reason that they're stating, is everything's going to be available for free online like it always is. So even if you have the old books, you can still probably go on Archives of Nethys and you'll be able to see whatever the new changes are. And if you want to use them, you can use them. If you don't, you don't. It seems like they'll be kind of covering their ass that way.
After watching the live stream and some interviews, I have gotten the impression that they're really just trying to cut the fat and to make the system easier to understand and to digest. And they're not really looking to change anything too largely mechanical with the system. Even though we're talking about removing ability scores, sounds like a big thing. But when the whole system is just running off of bonuses and circumstanced bonus and modifiers, then I feel like there is a way to kind of just use those simple numbers and not even need to worry about the ability scores, and they don't even really come into play that much. So I can see them easily removing it and keeping it compatible, because you're still going to have the same modifiers, and it probably still will be the same power level and skill level. The only changes you're really going to see is like the changes they need to make with alignment, with a lot of alignment-based classes, and a lot of the changes that they need to make with names of spells and names of monsters.
In a lot of the press releases on Paizo's blog, they're making a big deal about this Remaster Project being about making it easier for new players to get into Pathfinder and their accessibility, and making sure that that's not a problem when you're reading these books. What do you feel about that?
We think this is the most important piece of this project, because accessibility could mean a couple different things. It could, hopefully it means all of different things. Hopefully it means that they're going to be thinking about new players, accessibility about learning the game, accessibility for diversity and inclusion with some of the themes that are included in the game. Hopefully they're not taking accessibility so far to change key components, key mechanics of the system to make it easier.
Dumbing it down.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to see it dumbed down, because it is a simple system. It's just the way they explain it. It is just so tech manual-y.
This is a golden opportunity. This is the moment that is either going to make or break Pathfinder 2e in my eyes. They have a fantastic system that can go toe-to-toe and surpass Dungeons & Dragons in many ways. They have an image problem. We've talked about it numerous times on other videos, how everybody says the same thing about Pathfinder. It's too crunchy. It's too difficult to learn. I don't want a game that is as dense as Pathfinder, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. It's just as hard to learn as 5th edition. The problem is that Paizo, you have written a terrible core rulebook. You mentioned it as a tech manual. I tried for a couple of years to get through this thing, and I read role-playing game systems in my spare time. That's like what I do for fun. Until we started covering Pathfinder 2e for the channel, I was never able to get through that core rulebook. There's just something about the way that it's written. It is not an exciting read. It is very, this is how you play the game. This is it, and all the information is there, and it has very small text, and it is not newbie friendly. It's not written in a fun way. It is just destroying you with information overload. So if Paizo is taking this opportunity to redo these 4 books, you need to make sure that the layout is better, that finding stuff is better. And they've already said that they're going to do this, that if there's feats and everything related to the fighter, it's all going to be in one place. And that is such an improvement. I hated seeing, like, as we're going through all the core classes, it's like, oh, learn about your animal companion. Turn to page 214. That is not how you write a good rule book. Your competition is doing a much better job than you. Flat out. That is, I don't care. You can get mad at me for saying it, but it is the truth about Pathfinder. You have an amazing system, but you have shot yourself in the foot before you've even said go. You did fix it with the beginner's box, because that is an amazing product. If you took the beginner's box as sort of your jumping off point for getting people into that system, you would be doing a hell of a lot better.
So our first impression was the beginner's box, and our impression of that was like, well, I don't want to understand what everyone is saying about the system being crunchy. And as soon as we started jumping into classes and going through the journey of classes together, we finally understood where that stigma was coming from, and it was coming from the core rulebook. Because that thing is so difficult to understand.
When two people are looking at a class together, like our two brains need to decipher something, that's not a good thing. We're not the brightest liches on the planet, but man, we're not that stupid.
Yeah. And we came to the realization that the mechanics it was trying to describe to us were actually not difficult mechanics. They're very actually simple, and maybe even more simple than 5e's mechanics. But it was just the way it was written sometimes. And also, like you said, it's not a good read. Like, we need some theme in there. We need play with our imagination. We need to get some inspiration as we're reading through it. So hopefully those are big focuses for the Remaster Project. So this is the first place my mind went when I heard this news, and I was a little skeptical because it sounded a little too familiar. It sounded like One DnD's news.
I actually texted him the article, and that was the thing you texted back. You're like, why? What is this? Like,
I was
One
almost
D&D?
like,
You were
no.
And I was like, no, I don't think it's that bad.
Yeah.
One D&D is a mess. Just going by like the Creators Summit and all the other information that they're going, it's not a new edition. Now it's still just 5e. They have no friggin' clue what to do with 5e.
We've decided not to call it One D&D now.
They are just terrified of losing the player base, which they're just dropping people at like an exponential rate. Because Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro is the exact opposite of what Paizo has done here. Paizo is incredibly transparent about what this is. They have multiple Q&As and live streams with fans asking questions. They're like, you got rid of alignment. You were saying, how does alignment work instead of, because what you were saying was awesome. They're like, instead of, like, oh, how am I going to know how to control this monster without alignment?
Yeah, so people are asking, you know, what are we going to do in adventures if I don't know what a specific NPC's alignment is? And their answer was, oh, we're going to add some tags of what maybe personality traits these NPCs have, which I think is fantastic, and hopefully they really hold to that. To know that an NPC is cranky or greedy, I think that's much needed in tabletop role-playing in general.
It's way easier to understand for a new player than they're chaotic neutral.
Yeah. What personality is that? We haven't seen any of this new content come at us. Mm-hmm. So I'm really hoping that a lot of the mechanic things aren't changed. It's just how it's told to us for accessibility. Mm-hmm. Because we have seen One D&D playtest stuff, and it is too game-changing to be compatible in our minds.
We don't think that there's going to be any way that those books are going to be compatible.
Hell no.
And we don't trust Wizards of the Coast to care enough, because all they really care about is making more book sales. I don't think Paizo, this is an opportunity for them to sell more books, but I think they try to do right by their players first and foremost.
It's more about, we have a ton of brand new players and players coming from 5th edition. How do we keep them? Mm-hmm. It's not about how do we make a buck off of them. It's how do we keep our player base and grow it.
Which will in turn make you bucks.
Which will then make you bucks, right? It's the right way to run the business. Instead of like thinking about the ends justifying the means first. Like, you don't think about the finish line, you think about the race.
Also with One D&D, we don't know if Wizards is actually listening to the feedback that they solicit from people. They're saying that they do read it. Other people are saying that they don't. The big thing with One DnD is that it's like, oh, tell us what you want in this next edition. With Pathfinder, with this, Paizo is essentially taking everything that's already there that they know is good, and they're like, we're just going to give you guys that. We know this is what you're asking for.
We're just going to make it all official now.
Yes. This actually reminds me more of the 4th edition when they came out with the, I think it was the Essentials line.
Oh, yeah.
Where they sort of, not necessarily dumbed down 4th edition, but they made more accessible version of 4E, and it was pretty damn good. It was just too little too late for that system, unfortunately.
So while it sounds like a One DnD play, I definitely don't believe that it is. I have confidence that Paizo is just reworking this system, compiling everything that they've made into one official thing, and making it easier for 5th edition players and more palatable for that type of player. So how do you feel? Was this a smart move by Paizo, Wolf?
I'm a little torn. My primary concern here is that you're going to piss off and alienate all of those brand new people that you just sucked up and vacuumed away from Dungeons & Dragons 5e. They bought 8 months worth of core rulebooks in like 2 weeks in January. They purchased all of those Humble Bundle products. And now you're sort of being like, it almost feels like you're pulling out the rug on all these new players and being like, ah, gotcha. We got 4 new books coming out. Again, I don't think that it is them doing it maliciously. I think their hand was forced.
Yeah, it was.
So I do think this is a chance for them to really right the ship and take Pathfinder 2e to a level that it has previously never gotten to, and it kind of make it its own thing, which it needs to be. I don't think that Pathfinder 2e needs to be held down and chained to the heritage of Dungeons & Dragons anymore. Golarion is different from the Forgotten Realms or all the other crap that's in D&D. Make it its own setting. Be comfortable and confident that you can make it your own game that doesn't have to rely on D&D and it doesn't have to rely on the OGL. And I think in the end, it won't be a mistake. I think this will end up being a positive thing in the long run.
They were forced into a situation that just happened. And they were forced to react to that situation. And it's kind of unfortunate. People jumped on board the Pathfinder boat and wanted to play, and they were like, okay, sure, here's all the stuff, right? But then later realizing how bad the OGL situation was, and the decision to come away from it had to be made. It's an unfortunate situation, but an understandable one. I think it was smart, and it does suck for some of those people who did jump straight into Pathfinder, but I think it'd be better in the long run. If you'd like to hear us rant some more, please subscribe to Basic Liches, Toladed for notifications for new videos.
This is big, gigantic news from Paizo. We want to hear what all y'all think. Drop us some love down in the comments below so we can talk about the Pathfinder 2e remaster projects with you. On a personal note, for us Basic Liches, this comes at a time where we're in the middle of coming out with all of our basic impression videos for the core rulebook classes. What does that mean for that video series? We are going to continue pressing on. We've got like 3 or 4 more classes to go. So we'll complete the basic impressions on the core rulebook.
Maybe we just make some new videos on the changes that they make.
Moving forward, we will probably add in some new videos moving down the line. But that project is still moving forward. I know a lot of you are digging it. So we're going to keep giving it to you until it's done.
Well, that's all. We're very excited to see how they clean up these core rule books. Thank you guys for watching. We got the basic impression video for Pathfinder classes here, and we got another Pathfinder video right over there. Later, Liches.
Don't forget to subscribe. Bye!